Another one of the things that we're going to learn, I think later on this afternoon, is dynamic spin release,
Yeah.
which I believe you and Chris have both developed together, which is great. Could you say some more about that, please?
Yeah. Dynamic spin release is originally it started out as a discovery, and since then there are a number of techniques that have come from it. But where it came from originally was one morning, Chris, my wife Chris, had Saturday morning. We were reading the paper, drinking coffee, and she said, "I've got this kind of headache." He said, "Will you help me with this?" And we do that with each other a lot. And of course, within LP, you all might explore this idea, is sometimes I find if you take, for example, a problem like physical pain, and you pull it out and pretend and imagine you pull it out, get a little space from it, then you can dialogue with it, and you can have an interaction, find out, well, what's the positive purpose of this? Sometimes you pull it out and you say, if you go overlap it from a feeling to a visual, you say, well, what does that look like? And so they say, red knotted muscles. So look at those muscles and watch them change into a seagull flying out over the sea. And somehow you morph it into something else, and often the pain goes away.
Yeah.
You say, what does it sound like? And the person might say, well, it sounds like boom, boom, boom. And you go, okay, what's the song you enjoy? Say, well, Beethoven's Fifth. So you go boom, boom. Then change that into Beethoven's Fifth music. And it'll often change it as well.
Yeah.
So I was going to do something like that. But she pulled it out and she said, "It's really weird. It's like this pink brain, but it's kind of moving around, like this." Going, and just then the phone rang. And I was expecting a call, and I said, "I'll be right back." But she's just going around like this. I said, "Try it the other way then." Just anything, I didn't remember hardly saying that, but I came back and I said, "Okay, let's see what we can do with that headache." She said, "It's gone." And we didn't think that much about it at the moment because we're doing stuff like that all the time. And I thought, well, it's interesting. She did some kind of submodality thing. And but we didn't explore it that much. But later that day, she had a client. And the client kept saying, "We're in this vicious loop." And he kept going this way. And then she was actually on the phone. She said, "Real a loop, which way is that loop going?" And he kind of showed, he said, "Try to make it going the other way." And it began to change the way he talked about it. And even later in that same day, she was sitting with somebody and they had one foot crossed and they were kind of moving their foot around like this. And the more they moved the foot, the faster it went, and the more they got upset about this thing. And she said, "Wait a minute, stop moving your foot." And he said, "What?" And she said, "Move your foot the other way and talk about it." And they couldn't talk about it at all. So she told me about that night. And I thought, that's really interesting. So we began to explore this idea. And we began to notice people have these spinning gestures all the time. You might say, "So what's this issue going on with you?" "I don't know. It's just," and you start seeing these kind of gestures, or you hear them in the language. And English in particular has a lot of them. Yeah. "I'm all wound up, I've got this is just spinning out of control. It's twisted, I've got to unwind. I have a glass of wine tonight and unwind, and whatever." And so you hear these idioms as well. So we began to explore this idea, and we had where we would say, "Okay, get it going so fast it just disappears." And people so they'd take it, they'd reverse it until it got so fast it disappeared. And sometimes people would get like something showing up in its place. Somebody's, I remember one person said, "I just kind of visualized the bright sun shining on a landscape or a diamond or something." And so we began to incorporate that in. And so we'd spin something till it reversed and say, your unconscious will give you a metaphor. And virtually everybody would have it spinning in one way, and virtually everybody got some metaphor. And often there were these metaphors that the person never would have thought of consciously.
Yeah.
But when you step back and thought about it, you got absolutely the perfect metaphor for that person. I remember one of the older gentlemen was a piano player, and he was getting arthritis, and he said, he asked us to think he'll work on that, and work with that. And we said, probably, let's see. So he took the pain and he spun it, and he got back a gift, which was a healed finger. So Chris said, "Oh, well, we'll bring that in." He said, He was kind of a character. He had a funny sense of humor, and somebody we knew pretty well.
Mm.
But he said, "No, I want to send it out on an adventure." We go, "Okay." And so he sends it out on an adventure, and it comes back and had a diamond ring on it. But for him, that was very significant because it wasn't just the healed finger. When he brought it in, somehow the arthritic finger was a symbol of his getting older. He was 72 or 3.
Right.
He's a jazz piano player, and it's kind of like he didn't shine, he thought, anymore. That let him shine.
Yeah.
So our unconscious will give us these amazing gifts.
Yeah.
Later, we were teaching this. Somebody said, "Well, Bandler's been doing this for a long time," so we went and looked that up. And so, yeah, Bandler does have some similar techniques where he reverses the spin, but dynamic spin's got a whole set of other elements to it that has to do with metaphor, with using hypnotic language patterns, and a number of things. And it's a thing that I think Chris and I use probably more than anything else in our own practices because it works so consistently.
Yeah.
With anything from traumas to often physical pain to emotional issues.
Conflict.
Kids can do it. You can work with conflict. So again, content is never the issue with people, never the full issue. It's almost always with the form that they put it into.
And these two, integration movement and dynamic spin release, occurs to me that would be ideal in a working environment, in an office, an organization. Have you had any experience with that?
Oh yeah, it's well, yeah. I'll give you one of our students is a CEO of a hospital now, but for a while she was the chief nurse officer,
right,
which is like the third in line for the clinical staff in the hospital. And she had a fairly big staff, and she got really good at spinning things out. So she'd get an employee in trouble, and she was very good at rapport, very good at NLP. Was a health certified person, and she had the trust and confidence of a lot of her employees. And she told us she did that all the time with staff when they get upset. And in a complex environment like a hospital, there's a lot of emotion and difficulty. Sometimes patients will be abusive, or even patients' families will say, "Why didn't you say yes?" And it's like people are pretty traumatized.
Yeah.
So she did it, she said, pretty routinely. With eye accessing cues, you can do it anywhere. Once you know how to do it, you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
You don't always have to go like that and say, "Hold it."
Yeah.
But if you had something, I might notice a pattern there. And when you saw your eyes go to a certain place, say, "What's that? What's there right there?" Freeze yourself. And so you can, that can be very helpful. The using the eye accessing cues to access things, you want to do it in the proper environment with respect. Because I don't want to suddenly pop somebody into some imprint when they were 3 years old and they were traumatized by something.